お待たせいたしました。それでは TE-04 クラウド時代のコンプライアンスセキュリティの考え方を開演いたします。講師は Amazon Web Services AWS リスク&コンプライアンスディレクターチャド・ウルフです。それではお願いいたします。
Konnichiwa. I am Chad Woolf. I'm the Director of Compliance, Risk and Compliance for Amazon Web Services. And I'm very happy to be here in Tokyo and meeting with many of you as customers and partners. I've really enjoyed my time here with you. I've been with Amazon Web Services for 5 years now. I've been working with the risk and compliance area. My program is in charge of all the certifications, audits, and external independent validation that we do for the security that we operate in AWS. I also have a team that helps customers implement good security practices in their own instances of AWS. So we help solve some difficult challenges that customers may have around implementing security that will comply with compliance programs and obligations to regulators that our customers may have. My program scope is global, and I deal directly with customers of all industries across the world. Today, I want to talk a little bit about how security and compliance has evolved over the past 5 years since I joined Amazon Web Services. 5 years ago, we didn't have any security reports. We didn't have any independent validation of our programs. And most of our customers were doing very simple things in AWS. They were doing websites, they were storing data, and they weren't doing anything that would move regulated data into AWS. This is back in 2010. But since then, we've come quite a long way. Over the past 5 years, we've seen a lot of evolution of not only our customers themselves, who are moving all kinds of different workloads to AWS, but we're also seeing a lot of change in regulators and auditors and how they work with customers who are moving regulated, sensitive data, personal identifiable information into AWS. So there have been some security directives that have been around since, well, the mid-90s. I say the mid-90s because that's basically when the internet created a lot of security issues for companies trying to protect their systems. But the directives have been basically the same since then. The first one, established governance. You need to establish a program of governance that allows you to manage risk, that allows you to understand what risks you have, how to mitigate them, how to implement controls, create policies. These are things that entail establishing governance. We've been required to deal with emerging threats. A lot of vulnerabilities started coming out in Windows operating systems and in networks and in applications, and companies have been required to deal with those threats in some way. Some have been doing it very structured, some very ad hoc. And so this is still something we do today. Another directive would be build detect measures, meaning being able to detect changes in the environment or threats or attacks, and then moving those from just a mere detect into a prevent, where they would prevent attacks from ever happening. Another directive would be to automate controls. Automated controls are a much better way to control environment instead of using manual intervention of controls. So these are just a few, these aren't all of them, but these are just a few IT security directives that have lasted, that are basically the same over the past 20 years. The challenge that we have is that the complexity of systems and IT is rapidly accelerating. So the economy is getting bigger. We have, everything's getting more complex, more distributed. We have more IT and more things that traditionally were not in information systems being placed in information systems. The cloud is another new thing of an instant-on scalable environment that allows customers to spin up almost unlimited compute power, which also adds to the complexity of the IT environment. Mobile computing, we want all that information and all the data that we're generating to be available everywhere on any kind of device. And the last point is that technology is used now more to run a business. Before the technology, we weren't as reliant on technology to actually run our business and hold our intellectual property 20 years ago as we do today. But all this is creating a massive amount of complexity. We can see that the top 5 spending increases in 2015 will be around things that have to do with cloud computing. Security, 46% in security. Cloud computing itself, 42%. Business analytics, being able to analyze data and make sense of them in a business context. That's 38%. That's something that can be done in the cloud. And storage, of course, storage going up 36% in spending because of the massive amount of data that we're collecting, gathering, and retaining. And mobile wireless, of course, the delivery mechanisms for that is also, there's also an increase in spend. So I've identified 5 major areas of cloud evolution momentum that I'm seeing in the marketplace, and these are the 5. Security function being a driver of moving companies into the cloud. Outsourcing being a major strategic objective of moving to the cloud. Cloud first being a more prevalent stance of companies. I'm going to talk a little bit about enterprise use of cloud, and then my favorite topic, regulation adaptation for the cloud. So the first item, the security function is becoming a major driver for using the cloud. These security directives that I talked about at the beginning, are becoming more important, but they're also becoming much more difficult to implement and achieve. The traditional methods of managing security, the traditional way to assess security, and the reliance on checklists isn't going to cut it for managing security in this complex, newly complex environment. They're not scaling this. The traditional way to manage it is simply not scaling. You can't simply do the same thing that you've been doing in your environments for the past 20 years in this new environment. You have to change. There is more at stake because there's more data, more intellectual property, more use of IT systems to run business, to be the essential engine of business. It means that information security is becoming more important and not just a cost center. As you think of all these things, we also have to consider that security cannot be a blocker of business. We're finding that because the cloud is so easy to use, and anybody with a credit card can go sign up for an AWS account, if a company's security department says no, instead of providing a way to do it securely, we're finding that some people in the company are just going around the security and compliance department and using the cloud directly without it being under the governance or control structure. So security cannot be a blocker, especially if a company really wants to innovate quickly, use new technologies, and explore new markets. Item number 2, a driver for using cloud computing is outsourcing. So companies are outsourcing what we call non-differentiating activities, things that do not provide any competitive advantage for your business. One of those things is infrastructure. There is no competitive advantage that a company that's providing services and information services or banking or pharmaceutical research directly to, as they run their business, there is no competitive advantage of running a fantastic data center and being really good at providing security of that data center. It's something that's just expected. But that does not provide a competitive advantage for most companies. Vendors are getting better at the specialized functions. They're getting much better and at providing a much better user experience or company experience in using their services. And they can also, because they limit what they're providing, they can provide that better and more securely. Vendor risk management is getting more important because as you outsource more traditionally key functions, it becomes more important to be able to assess those vendors in a way that makes sense and that better reflects what the business drivers are and the business risks are. A third point of evolution I'm seeing is a cloud-first strategy is becoming much, much more prevalent. Probably as little as 18 months ago, a cloud-first policy in an organization was pretty rare. But in the last 18 months, cloud-first has become a very common strategy of big enterprises. Cloud is an evolved outsourcing arrangement. It's not exactly shared hosting, and it's not exactly commercial off-the-shelf software, but it's something in between there. And that's really why it causes a lot of difficulty for people who classify services in one bucket or the other. Because it's a combination, it's an evolved kind of service, it presents some challenges, and I'll talk about that a little later. In addition to outsourcing benefits, it improves agility, security, and cost management. I think there's been a lot of discussion about those benefits. Cloud first is a growing position for enterprises, but it's cloud or bust is really the position of small and mid-sized companies. Small and mid-sized companies simply cannot invest all the capital expenditure to get the infrastructure they need to test new markets and try new services. They simply can't do it. So for small and mid-sized enterprises, it's cloud first or cloud or bust is an essential. Item number 4, the enterprise use of cloud. We're seeing a lot of companies moving from the easy things to the more difficult things. The easy things are things like, let's do our websites on AWS. or let's just dump a bunch of backup data to S3. The hard things are, let's put the personal identifiable information in AWS. Let's put health information. Let's put financial information in AWS. That's the hard thing, because it takes more coordination, it takes more buy-off of stakeholders. But because of the value that it brings to any of those kind of workloads, we see companies pushing more and more of this to the cloud. We're finding that customers know more about doing this than the regulators do, the auditors do. And why is that? It's because the IT operations team of a company has experience in developing IT, deploying IT, and managing it. Whereas an auditor doesn't necessarily have a lot of this experience. They understand the regulations, they understand how they used to do it, and how they traditionally assess a company's IT environment, but they don't know the practical aspects of implementation. So many of our customers know more about how to do this and what's appropriate to review and how to look at this new hybrid kind of technology of outsourcing, shared hosting, and commercial off-the-shelf products. They know how to assess it better. And regulations are simply not changing as fast as the businesses are adopting cloud. Again, many times the regulators themselves, because they have limited experience with running IT, they have a high level understanding of it, and they're trying to create regulations that match, and it's really difficult to get everyone to agree. So the fifth one, regulation adoption for cloud. As I mentioned, regulatory definitions of IT are disrupted by the cloud. In the past 5 years, we've had to have regulators and standards bodies define what the cloud is and what it means to customers as you deploy and apply security principles to the cloud environment. Security and risk is lost in translation a lot of the times. And what I mean by lost in translation is what usually happens is a standards body creates maybe a risk framework or a list of best practices to apply to the IT environment. And the auditors and regulators take that and then they convert it to something that's equivalent to a checklist. And then they take the checklist and they go to every company and they apply the checklist, and it's a kind of a check-the-box exercise. The problem with that is as IT evolves and things change, then that checklist becomes in some part obsolete and simply does not apply. And so the fact that those are separate and it's rare that someone goes back and changes a checklist as the IT changes results in a lot of auditors asking questions that simply don't make sense in the new IT environment. Rules and regulations are slowly changing to accommodate. So we have some guidance that comes out. FISC is a good example of providing some specific guidance around using the cloud. Other bodies create a cloud version of an existing standard, and this is becoming more and more prevalent. But up until probably 2 years ago, there wasn't a lot of traction here. But I believe there is today. So we have a couple AWS customer case studies that I'd like to cover. The first one, Sony Bank. Sony Bank is a customer that's been using AWS, and they've been putting some banking systems and some internal systems on AWS. The business intelligence tools, risk analysis tools, document management, and things like that are being moved to AWS. They had to do kind of their own specific and precise risk assessment of evaluation of security and risk of AWS, both on us, what we do internally to provide a secure service, and also how they are going to architect their environment to be a secure platform for their users. AWS, the FISC guideline and the FISC partner solution helped with that. We have a white paper that aligns the FISC requirements to how it's applied in the cloud, and Sony leveraged that. And they did kind of an original risk assessment of the AWS environment. The business benefit, of course, 37% of total cost reduction in 5 years. That's their projected cost savings. And then, of course, it's designed to achieve the scalability and improve fault tolerance, better business continuity planning, et cetera. So this is a really great case study, and we're watching this closely and supporting it as they roll this out. Coiny came to AWS. One of the major benefits of AWS for Coiny was the fact that AWS had a PCI compliance certificate already, and they were able to build something very quickly on AWS. In just 1 month, it took them 1 month to go from system planning to actual deployment. That's very, very fast. They didn't have to wait for procurement. They could spin things up and understand how to do it securely, do some testing before deploying rather quickly. One note that they had was that it decreased their compliance burden. You do get an uplift of using AWS because of all the investment that we've made on the platform. The investment in physical security, the investment in the hypervisor security, and the investment in the services and capabilities we're providing to our customers gives the customer an uplift in not having to do all that themselves. Coiny also was scaling their credit card payment system. It auto-scaled to accept more payments to process, and then auto-scaled to save costs for each server instance. So this is another good case study. FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulation Authority in the United States, is an independent regulatory authority. They use AWS, and they separated how they use it and how it helps them with compliance on 2 fronts. One, they call it the big C, which helps them better do their regulatory responsibilities for customers. And then little c, the internal standards. They have many internal standards that they were able to comply with based on AWS's security posture and the capabilities, again, that we provide to them. They created an access management system. There's like a compliance monitoring system that they implemented. They use CloudTrail and use Splunk, which is a reporting interface for CloudTrail. And they also federated identities to make it so they had single sign-on and using the same identities that they manage on-premise. So a really good case study for that, too. Suncorp. It's this is an Australian bank that they have a cloud-first policy now, and they had to work with their regulators. The regulators were a little nervous about them moving so quickly, but they were able to resolve their concerns and show them their plan, and the plan was solid, and the regulators then agreed with the plan and helped them be successful from a regulatory standpoint. This is a great case study in a bank leading the industry and helping the regulators really figure out what to do with cloud computing and their regulatory obligations. Jeff Smith, the CEO, said, when you spend time talking about what can't be done, that's a waste. So we're going to move everything to AWS. So that's a good quote from them. They focused on what went first, and then they figured out how to accelerate that, and they quickly addressed the risks, the security issues, the legal, the governance issues, and they, like I said, worked directly with the regulators on making sure they were doing what they needed to with them. So which workloads can you move? There are some questions, some customers are concerned about this and wondering what kind of workloads can be moved to AWS. The simple answer is that there are a wide range of regulated workloads that can be moved to AWS. So SEC 17A4 is an American, the Security and Exchange Commission. They have rules around log retention and the ability for the logs to be written but never erased. The cloud is a great use case for that, because there is a scenario in which, on premise, that even though you have it logically secured, someone might be able to access the data center and physically destroy a disk drive. But in the cloud, that risk or that possibility is eliminated. So that's a really good case study for that. 45 CFR 164.312, that's actually a healthcare regulation in the United States, and that's for regulation of personal health information. And we do have customers that have moved personal health information and service providers that host a lot of health information onto AWS. NIST special publication 853 R4 I think the Japanese, there's a lot of Japanese customers that are familiar with NIST and use NIST as a best practice standard. This one has to do with government, using AWS or cloud for government, and this is something very commonly used now in the United States. PCI DSS, the data security standard for credit card payments, that's also very common now across the globe, of using AWS for processing payments. And then the EU directive has to do with privacy and the transfer of data in the EU. I could have added FISC here, because FISC, we have a lot of good traction with FISC in Japan. Okay, so some of the issues, there's some issues to address when moving critical or regulated workloads to AWS, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those critical issues. So issue number one, services and security. So the services we provide enable the success of the business. And we talk about, when you come to sessions or conferences like this, there's a lot of discussion about the services themselves and how they enable business and how they enable you to advance innovation in making sure that you're exploring new markets, that you're getting the competitive advantage you need, enabling you to try new things, try new products. But there's something generally overlooked, and I think it's overlooked by those working in the business. But the security itself, there's actually two aspects of the security we provide to our customers. One is the security we build into the services. So the security that we put in the data centers, and the security in the code that we put in as we deliver that to customers. There's a lot of investment, more investment than most any other company would put into that kind of service, because they're not leveraged like AWS is across the globe. So we invest a lot in that. So you're getting a very secure service. But one thing that might be overlooked is the fact that the security capabilities, the security functionality, the ability for our customers to manage security better. And by simplifying really difficult, traditionally difficult tasks, is something that can't be overlooked. We are putting a lot of power to manage security in the hands of your people. If you connect these two, the secure use of the services and the secure delivery of services, you have what's been termed in the industry as the ability to secure the cloud with the cloud. And I think that plays into well when we think about the increasing complexity of IT, because the complexity of IT is simplified in a service provided to you where the security controls are built in and the security functions are highly automated, and they're written in software. So these things enable you to manage maybe something that takes a lot of, that's very complex to manage in their separate pieces, but putting it together in one service that now allows you to effectively manage the cloud and secure the cloud with the cloud. A year and a half ago, Forrester said this, and I think it's true today. We'll also see organizations adopt cloud services for the improved security protections and compliance controls that they otherwise could not provide as efficiently or effectively themselves. And we are seeing that especially with small business. Think of the investment of the security and compliance controls that we put into AWS. And when a small company uses those services, it's as if they invested that much in the security of those kind of services or those kind of IT functions. So they're getting a great uplift, and there's few companies that can invest that much in this level of service, and AWS does. So issue number 2, governance. Policy is really, company policies are not very agile in general, and companies are very careful about changing policies. And so policies need to reflect how AWS is used. You can't get away with not modifying your policies because it's just a different kind of service delivery. Governance also good governance over IT would also require you to implement automated controls. Automated controls are the key of the future in managing this complexity, because manual controls cannot scale, cannot keep up with all the changes that are going on. But one thing you do need to do is integrate your AWS environment with your existing control structure. Your existing control structure is validated, it's known by the auditors, it's known by the security teams. You need to integrate what's in AWS with that control structure. The best way to do this is creating an AWS account that is secure and compliant by default, meaning you can allow anybody to use the environment, spin up instances with approved machine images and approved security rules, users and groups and federated identity and things like that, that allows people in the company to explore without worrying about violating some security policies. And this can be done, and we have a great capability to do this. It's no secret that AWS is innovating. I mean, we've been innovating in the services we provide, but something that's not often looked at is the number of security services that come with that innovation. So in last year alone, with the 514 new services and features that were delivered to customers, 192, or approximately 35% of those, had to do with increased security capability. I mean, think about that. You're using a service that continually builds in better security capabilities without the need to do a massive IT integration. You're upgrading massive software. You are simply inheriting new controls and new capabilities, new security features, all during the year. It's a great story and a good thing to consider as you consider how in the future you're going to handle the complexity, the growing complexity, we help you do that by providing these extra services for no additional charge in most cases to your environment. I just got the 5-minute warning. So here are some of the services that are auditor friendly. AWS Config, key management service. I mean, how many of you can rotate keys on a daily basis? How many of you rotate keys at all? It's tough. These are difficult things to do. And with a service like key management service, it makes it very easy. It eliminates a lot of security risk in your organization. Trusted Advisor is a service that allows you to see security configuration and things that you might need to check up on. Last AWS sign-in, CloudTrail, identity access management reports and policies. AWS policies are amazingly powerful because they provide you the ability to do automated controls and provide a lot of great governance over your environment. So issue 3, vendor risk programs. Vendor risk programs need to be updated. You need to, as you outsource more of these fundamental functions, the vendor risk management program needs to accommodate you applying good governance over these vendors. Issue 4, auditors and regulators. You need to have a cloud risk management program. You need to integrate cloud and on-prem control frameworks. Designing testing plans and defending your positions, that's all key to educating your auditors. And most auditors that I've dealt with are really reasonable. They want to understand how it operates. They want to hear your experience and know what you guys are thinking about moving to the cloud. We have some good interaction with our customers' auditors, and on a regular basis. Okay, I'm out of time, but you guys I can hear all the pictures being taken as I'm flashing through these. I think my point today that I want to make, the last point, is that because the AWS environment is a software-driven environment primarily, regulated and sensitive data it's a better fit for it. It's more secure and allows you for better governance than a distributed on-prem environment where getting a simple inventory of your servers can take years or you could never do it. Most of our customers, I had a customer, a major customer who I asked, can you inventory your environment? And how long would that take you? And he said, well, if I started today, I would finish 100 years after you are dead. And so that from that, I think that just getting an inventory in AWS is extremely simple. You can easily pull an inventory of your servers and where your data is, and that's a good example of better governance over your environment. So regulated and sensitive data will be a better fit to be stored and processed in the cloud. I think it's a matter of time before regulators and auditors realize that this automated environment with better security controls, better security capability is better fit for these really sensitive and secure workloads. We have some resources to help you learn more. We have both white papers, videos, and also hands-on labs that allow you, from an auditor perspective or a governance perspective, go in and see how AWS works and how to do proper governance. And so this is a good one for those of you who are probably not the IT technical person, but somebody who needs to exercise governance over the AWS environment. And that's it. Thank you very much.
どうもありがとうございました。